Hey there, welcome to today's episode. It's going to be a live unedited session. We're going to be making a beat with the MPC Live. Apologies for any background noise. It's still noisy in my street. There's all this maintenance work. I don't know how long it's going to go on for, but it seems like it's going to be going on probably for a good couple of months. We've got the SP404 Mark II out as well so that we can kind of bounce between the two devices if we need to. And one thing about the SP404 Mark II, it's had a recent update. If we go into Shift and Utility and go into System, just scroll all the way over to the end. It's 5.01. Not a lot has changed, but one important thing has, and that's if we move all the way back and scroll all the way down to the bottom, you will see Start Up Screen. You can now skip it. So when you turn on the SP, since 5.0, you've had this kind of forced sponsorship light show that kind of turns on with the device. So you would see the Koala logo, Melodics, can't remember the other one, Serato, whatever it is. Slows down the startup time, and you're kind of forced to see this sort of advertising. We know that it works with Serato and Koala. If you've got one of these devices, you know all of that. It seemed a little off to me when they introduced that they were going to kind of force this advertising on you. And it does. It's just all showing all these logos means that it's longer to boot up the device. Obviously, people complained, and now you can skip it. You can set it to skip so you don't have to see all of that. Your SP will boot up just like it did prior to the 5.0 update. A good move for Roland, I think, because, yeah, it's kind of fair enough. If you want the logos, you can still have them, but it was kind of just forced upon you, and I don't really need to see all that crap. Let's go with the Live. This is the Live one, the OG Live. It's custom painted. I stripped it down. I only mention this because every time I post with this device, someone asks me about it, whether it's a skin. It's completely custom painted. It's a real pain in the backside to do as a job because you have to strip it down to every last circuit board. The older MPCs are really easy to work on. It's like a metal casing and a chassis. It's all kind of separate. This thing is just entirely plastic, and everything is connected to this plastic body. So if you want to do something similar, it's not for the faint-hearted. It's something that you need to be a little bit skilled in terms of just being very careful taking things apart. But it does get rid of the rubber coating. And you can just buy a skin. I dare say you could just go and get a skin. But I didn't want a skin. I wanted it to be properly painted. So this is now Battleship Grey. No text under the buttons, which also gets mentioned a lot every time I post about this. It doesn't matter because there's so little buttons on the OG Live that I can remember exactly what the shortcuts are for all of these buttons. The shift function usually does something else. I know all of that by heart. Muscle memory comes into play. I know these are the banks. It also changes the octaves when you're in key group mode and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't worry about it. If you got an OG Live and you want to go for it and lose the text, the thing about not having the text with all of these devices is it looks cleaner. In my opinion, it just looks slightly more modern. It looks better. I know there's a reason the text is there, but anyway, just wanted to cover a few things because I know in the comments people will be, oh, why is your, MPC grey and where's the text and all the usual stuff. We've got a blank project. Today I want to do what I did in the last episode where I was playing around with the Push 3 and we made a sample from scratch. That's becoming more and more important these days because I want something that I feel like somebody else doesn't have. That's kind of, sample digging, whatever you want to call it. It's important in the sense that it gives you your own identity. And finding that obscure record, whether it's through Spotify or you've got genuine vinyl, stuff like that, that's kind of the fun of it, finding something. Sample packs are great. I make them, I buy them. It's something that I will use. But at the same time, there's a part of me that wants something very unique and just individual. That used to come from sampling more on the channel, but because YouTube's copyright has gotten so good, it's really hard to get it past the gate now in terms of the copyright police. I just get copyright and warnings, not strikes, but warnings a lot of the time. So building your own samples from scratch is becoming more and more important, I think. And all it is some audio. Really, when you think about a sample, that's all I want is just a piece of audio to chop up. And once you've chopped it up and pitched it, you get all these different results. So you don't need to be too fussy about what you create. It just has to have the right kind of vibe. But that's how I look at it anyway. So I want to see if we can do a similar thing on the MPC. With the MPC, they give you a couple of plugins when you buy one of these more modern MPCs. There are a few of these like plugins that they sell you. I've only got the free ones. If we start a new track, well, we've got a track here, and if you actually just click on the track by the number, you can change it. So this is a drum program, but if I wanted a plugin, just switch it to a plugin. And then I think if we click on plugin, is that how we change these? It's been a while since I used them, but yeah. So I've got all of these ones, which are the free stuff. You've got Bassline, Electric, Hype, Mellotron, Odyssey, Selena, Tube Synth. I haven't bought any of these, but we're just going to use some of them. I'm going to stay with electric, which is the one that I've set up as default. It's like a Rhodes piano. It's a little bit quiet, but we're going to up the volume and stuff in a second. There's a couple of cool things about this, though. We can change the preset, so if you want a slightly different sound, you can. This one is Ballad EP. This one's kind of cool. Kind of like the general tone for it. But we can add some effects and we can start messing around with the sound of this. So let's do that. Let's go to the effects for the plugin and just dial it in. Now, I've said this before about MPCs. There's a bunch of different ways and different places where you can add effects, but I'm just doing it here on the plugin itself, not on this master output, but on the plugin. And then we're just going to add whatever we need. I'm going to start with some harmonics and go with something like Air Flavor Pro. If we open this up, it takes a second sometimes to boot up the screen, but it will show up in a second. There we are. Gives us a slightly more wobbly kind of dusty vibe. There's a bunch of presets. We'll try and just choose a preset rather than dialing in. And if you're not familiar with Air Flavor Pro, it's pretty much the same as RC20. It's very similar. You've got all these different parameters you can change. And if you click on these, you can deep dive. It's a pretty nice little plugin. They did one called Low Fly Dirt or something like that that came out recently. I think it was maybe cheaper, but it's just not as good. My advice is if you can, wait for the sale, but get Air Flavor Pro. I think it's better generally. But let's open this back up. We want to just come back to where we've got everything. Now, I kind of like this one. This is the Akai 44S. Just adds a little bit to the sound and kind of makes it a little bit more vintage. We can add other stuff, though. One thing I'm interested in is maybe a delay. So let's try the air diff delay as well. We'll add that in. We'll open this up and just dial the mix back a little bit. Gives us a little bit of delay, obviously. Maybe take the mix back even more. Just want it to be a little detail. And one of the cool things about these MPCs is the fact that you've got this mode here. So if you press this little grid icon, you get into pad perform where you can start playing chords and messing around. Now, I'm going to keep the volume low because one thing you'll notice is that if you start playing chords, let's just put it into chords mode for a second. Leave it with just C major. I've got non-fixed velocity on, so obviously there's no fixed velocity, so you'll get variation in velocity in terms of the levels. But if we take a look just back at main for a second, when it starts playing chords, it's easy for it to start distorting because that volume's going to build up quite quickly. So it's important to just keep an eye on the volume levels as you're messing around there. Everything else seems okay. One thing I might do, let's go back to the plugin. I'm going to add some saturation. Now, there are probably other saturation effects in this list, but the one that surprises me is always the one that is in with the air filter, because you don't expect it to be with the filter. You expect high pass, low pass, that kind of thing. But if I load this up, you'll notice that, yeah, over here we've got our saturation. So if we want to increase that, and I do want some saturation because I want to start breaking the sound down a little bit, we'll crank this up. So it's getting a little bit loud and a little bit distorted, but that's kind of what we want to a certain extent. Let's go back to main. Now you can check your headroom levels and stuff here with this little indicator. If it's clipping out, you're going to get some red. I know when you're working on hardware like this, it's a bit different to the DAW. It's not that it's not easy to pay attention to the clipping levels, but sometimes it's just easy to kind of forget about it. But we do want to reduce the volume so that we're not getting too much. But there you go, we've got that. Let's go back to this little pad perform page. There's a bunch of stuff that you can do. So as you can hear, we're already playing around with chords if we wanted chords. We've got progressions. You've got notes. I mean, I kind of like notes sometimes, just like a simple note where you can set the scale and the octave. So I don't know if we wanted, let's go for D. Should we do D major? Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Kind of like that. We can then play around with that and sort of see if we can come up with just something melodic to start building what is going to be our sample. So I'm going to leave it D major. Yeah, there's something there that kind of like, we need to work out a couple of things in terms of tempo. Doesn't even matter if the tempo is what we want for the beat later on, because maybe we just make the sample at whatever tempo we like, and then we chop it up and then we add it to, you know, something, a different tempo later on. I'm going to make it relatively slow, so let's do 70 BPM. Just going to see what that sounds like by doing record and play start. Yeah, I don't mind that. 70 BPM is probably about right. And click undo if I just want to come out of there. That's actually undone my tempo as well, but let's just leave it like that so it's fresh to start. And I'm just going to noodle around. Doesn't really matter too much. Yeah, don't mind that. Just a little something melodic. Needs layers, it needs more things. So let's add another track. We'll do a new track and we'll do another plugin. Let's go with a plugin and we'll try and find something else. Now, we might swap the plugin type out. Let's click on this. Let's go with, I don't really know these very well. Let's go with Odyssey. A lot of them are going to be kind of synths, and I'm more of an analog kind of guy in the sense of more kind of real instruments as opposed to synths. Obviously, you can get analog synths, but you know what I mean. But there might be some kind of soft pad or something that will work well with what we've got. Now, this Odyssey might not be the best one. Let's swap it out for something else. Let's try Mellotron and see what that sounds like. Okay, so that's cool. We got some strings. Yeah, just 3 simple notes there. We might play around with the sound, but let's record those in. Record and play start. Good enough. Let's go into the plugin and add some effects to this. The first thing, I'm going to do another filter, but this time I'm more interested in it as a filter, so I want to take some of the high end out of those strings. Just want to make everything a little bit more kind of lo-fi. Yeah, okay, not too unhappy with that. Maybe a little Airflavor Pro on those as well. If we go back to harmonics, we can add another one of those. Just open this up. And I'm just going to use the same Akai 44S preset just to kind of keep some consistency. But that's okay, we've got something that's building. It's like a little melody, a little sample. Let's add something else. I don't know whether I want to put bass into it, because sometimes it's nice to control the bass line elsewhere. But I don't know, maybe we could. One thing here as well is that there's only a certain amount of sounds that I want out of these particular plugins that are built in. So that's where having your own samples and C-note samples comes in very handy. So if we do another new track, this time we're going to use a key group. Now there is a little issue with the key groups. I know somebody in the comments was saying they thought it was supposed to work this way. I don't believe that. It doesn't make any sense to me, because it's telling me I can browse for my sample here, which you can, but you can't load it from this menu. I still think it's a bug personally. If I go to my SSD and go to sample packs, I'm going to go to NervousCook C-Notes. This is my own sample pack, and it's just C-Note samples with a bunch of like real instrument sounds. It's going to come in very handy for something like this. So if we wanted some keys or a mallet, let's go into the mallets, and I don't know, say we wanted this kind of marimba, we can load that up. But if I load it, it won't load it to the key group, which I think it should. Someone said they don't think it works this way, and it's kind of designed that you have to kind of grab it from the sample pool. It makes no sense, because why bother putting this here then if you can't load it from there? I think it's a bug. So I disagree with that person in the comments. They may come back and argue with me about it, but the way that we assign it currently is that you have to go to the sample pool. So you go to sample assign, select it here, and then double click on it to make sure it's loaded into the key group. This doesn't make any sense, that at all. You should be able to load it directly from the browse button. There you go. We've now got this kind of marimba sound loaded up. It needs a couple of things though. So if we go into the program, I'm not sure what it's called now. I think it's called Track Edit. It used to be called Program Edit, but it's pretty much exactly the same thing. If we just check a couple of things, one, poly and poly, so that it can be kind of overlapped, so it's not monophonic. You need to check that. And then amp and envelopes, where I can pull the release out a little bit, so it's going to play more of that sample. Well, if we pull the release the entire way, then it's going to play all of the sample. I might pull it back a little bit. But you get the idea. Pretty cool sound. And then, of course, we can come up and down. Got all of this that we can mess around with. Let's add a couple of effects to this. Now, we can apply effects while we're inside of the program, if you like, but I still kind of prefer just putting them onto here, where we're kind of dealing with this sort of track or this channel. So let's add a little delay to that. And again, I might go multi-tap delay this time. Has quite a nice feel to it. Might change the delay type in terms of the timing of it. And what we'll do is we'll turn the mix down as well, because it's a little heavy. Let's change this to, I don't know, let's try 1/8. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. And then what we can do is we can come back. We can add in maybe a filter as well, just to filter a little bit of the high end. And add a little bit of saturation. Now, I'm just going to keep it with the overdrive. There are a bunch of different types that you can change here, but I'm just going to dial this up. And I want to dial up the drive until it starts to like crackle a little bit, like you hear on old records. Those high ends can kind of break up a touch. Just there, where it starts to just got that weird little sound that breaks up a touch. Might make the overall level quite loud, but we can adjust that. We can just change the volume here a bit. Now, because this is a C-note sample, it plays perfectly with this mode, so this pad perform mode. So whenever we bring this in, whatever the key and the sort of scale that we set before, so in this case D major, if it's a C-note sample that you're loading into the key group, it will play perfectly, so your chords will be correct. And it means that as we're building this track, we're just staying in D major. We know at the end of it, all right, if we bounce that audio down and then we pitch it and chop it up, it might become something else. But for the most part, as we're working, as long as we're using C-note samples, it means it's going to play perfectly. So when I'm noodling around, you'll notice before when we did the strings, I can't really play a bum note because we're locked in using this D major. So it should be the same case when we're playing now. Get the idea. Can't really play a bad note. Let's turn the volume down a little bit more. It's still quite loud. And all I need is something like that. I don't really care that it's the most perfect melody, because ultimately I'm looking to make the sample and bounce it down and do something else with it. So let's do that. Let's just play around and try and record something for what is 2 bars that we're still working with. It's only short. We could make it longer for whatever, but 2 bars will do. One thing to bear in mind as well, timing correction. I've left this on at 1/16th note, so everything's kind of snapped to the grid. Normally, I might turn that off so that it allows for a little bit of, obviously, non-quantized content, mainly just to make it feel more realistic. Obviously, if it's a real person playing instruments, you're trying to make this fake sample, everything's not going to be snapped to the grid. It's going to be okay for today's episode because I can't be bothered going back and re-recording it. But just keep that in mind. I could have just come in here, quickly turn quantization off. So I don't think I'll make it too much more complex because otherwise the video will be really long. We want to just get to the point where we've got a sample and then we can chop it up and do something with it. I don't think I'll put the bass in. I was tempted to put a bass line in, but I think maybe we'll leave that and we'll do that separate. This could be like the intro part in a record, some just little sample we found somewhere, a little breakdown that we kind of like. We just need to do a couple of things. I'm going to go over here and take a look at what am I looking for? My channel mixer. Just wanted to balance things a little bit. Not going to spend too long doing that. Obviously, that's something you can spend more time doing. But we've got that now. And if I remember right, there is a way to just bounce that to a sample. I think if you go into the sequence, can you bounce it from here? There is definitely a way, which has kind of slipped my mind at the moment, to bounce things down. You have to be in the arrangement. One of these will allow you to, there you go, see, we can bounce it to a sample. The reason I wanted to point that out is one, because it's a cool feature that just allows you to bounce everything down from your sequence to one audio sample. So that would be a quick way of taking that and making it a sample. But we're going to do something slightly different here because I want to use the SP404 Mark II. So I'm not too worried about doing that. But if you wanted to, if you don't have the SP and you're just at this point, you want to bounce it to an audio sample, chop it up, you could. Let's move back over to the key group. What I want to do is I want to send the audio through the SP now. So one thing I need to be careful of, I have this little switcher box which is letting me choose different inputs coming into the MPC. I'm going to move it over to number 3, which is where the SP is. But I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you're taking audio through a device, which we are currently, if I play this and press one of the effects, you can hear that delay and the isolator. So we're sending the audio through the SP. We're going to bring it back in. If you do that and you have your monitoring on, you're going to create a feedback loop and it's going to be horrible. So you have to be very careful. We're going to go to sampling. And this is cool, the switcher box, because it has a separate volume control. So I just make sure that's turned all the way down. Make sure monitoring is off because we don't want it coming through. Press play and then just dial this in on the switcher box to get a decent bit of volume here. Now, before we dial that in, what I want to do is I want to apply some effects from the SP. So actually, I might go, what was our tempo? we've got 70. We're going to do shift and tap tempo on the SP and dial that into 70 BPM. That means if we use any delay or anything like that, it's going to be kind of correct. It's going to match. And then the other thing, if we come out of here, if I do push and enter and bus 3 and 4, it turns on buses 3 and 4, my effect buses, which I have set up to the 303 vinyl sim and a little EQ so that I can just balance things out a little bit. So let's just see what it sounds like now. It might get a little bit loud. Let's see. And what we can do is we can go in and change those effects a little bit. So if I go to Shift and EFX settings, I can take a look over here towards the end. So I'm boosting the high end by 5, little bit of mid dip and low gain, but that's whatever I was last messing around with. I think in here, I'm actually I don't want so much of a high gain, so we'll dial that back to 0. And let's just put everything kind of to 0. If you're wondering about my encoders on the SP, I have them set to latch, which is like a setting, so it means they won't move unless you go beyond like the parameter value. I hope that makes sense, but if you're just wondering why they're not just moving, it's because I have to move them a certain amount before it kicks in. It's just something that I prefer. But let's leave it across the board, EQ like that for a second. And let's just move back to our second effect, which is the vinyl sim. I'm going to start with the vinyl sim. Might add a little bit more compression. Let's see what happens. Little bit of compression, putting a little bit of wow and flutter in there so it gets a little bit wobbly, not too much, and just a small amount of the kind of vinyl static noise. It's pretty subtle, I think, on the 303 sim on the SP404 Mark II. Anyway, it's not like super crackly and in your face, and if you want that, it's probably better to layer in a sample that's like that. But anyway, we've got that set up. Let's move back up where I can now just take a quick look at the EQ. Yeah, good enough. So now when we're sending that through, we're sending it through with all of those effects. I might even try a little delay actually. Let's press play. It needs to come out of here. We already had some delay going on over here, but if you add a second delay at a different time rate, sometimes that can just flesh things out. It just gives it a more interesting feel. So we've got that all coming through, and it's now coming back in. So I just want to set the volume level here, make sure it's not too loud. We can always normalize and bring it up. But that's how we're going to take the effects from here, the effects from the SP, and bring it all back in as a sample. But as I said, just be mindful of your monitoring. I've warned you. Let's do this. Just going to stop that. We're going to keep that as our new sample. I'll just leave it labeled as new sample, but of course we have an opportunity here to label it. The one thing now, because we've turned some effects on the SP, as we're playing stuff, you're going to start doubling it up. So over back on the SP, just make sure that the delay is off and bus 3 and 4 is also off. We're going to then keep that sample, move over to main where I can go into sample editing and take a look at the new sample. So here is our fake sample that we've created. What we'll do is we'll commit. Let's go to main. And I'm going to delete out these tracks because we don't need them anymore. We've used these plugins for whatever we wanted. Just get back to a completely fresh project and come and take a look at this sample. Now, let's start by processing. So we'll normalize. I think I recorded that for maybe, I'm not even sure, probably 4 bars, I think, in the end, because I let it play longer than what we had before, which was 2 bars. but that's our sample. That's something that we want. We can just go straight into chopping it up. You could loop it up and then you could warp it and play around with transposing it up and down and just have it as like a cool loop like I did with the Push 3 episode. But I think today we're going to chop it up. So I don't need to worry about the bit of dead end space or the space that's at the end of the sample. Let's just start chopping it. Going to move over into chop mode. And I like to chop manually. You can do it by the transient, however you like, but I'm just going to do it like this. Just like that, just to get a few slices. We'll do Shift, 0 snapping, so that it's going to snap to the 0 crossing point, no clicks and pops. And all I'll do is just zoom right in, hit the first pad. And then I like using these to dial things in terms of like your start point. You just need to make sure start is selected on the cue link, because if it's selecting something else, obviously you're going to be changing that. Start is what we want. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again just for the beginners. If you move your top one, it moves in big chunks. The one underneath will move kind of in smaller chunks, so like a little bit smaller. Finer movements is what I'm trying to say. And it's the same all the way down. So when you're fine tuning, they have like different amounts that they will jump. I usually use this second one down. This first pad's fine. There might be a little bit of a click in there, which we can dial out in a second. And I can see the transient. There we go. Set up. Good enough. We're now going to do Shift and convert. It's going to create a new drum track with those slices, so we can say do it. And when we go back to main, that should be set up. I've said it before, again, I'll say it again. When we're playing around with the MPCs, it's good to be organized, otherwise it gets a bit confusing. So where we've got our new sample here, that's basically the name of the sample that we chopped up. But we could call this something else so that it's easy to recognize. And I'll call it chops so that I know that's where the sample chops are. Just makes your life easier in the long run. Only takes a second. They're already into a choke group because the MPC works like that. You can set separate choke groups and kind of dial down further, but for the most part, once it's in a side of its track edit, I think it's called now, rather than program edit, it's already in a group. You can hear they're not overlapping. And then if we go to that group and we go to global, we can play around with a couple of things. The first one, the top here, would be just pitching it and seeing what it sounds like at a different pitch. And there we go. We'll mess around with that. Before we dive too far into playing around with that, let's put some drums together because we need some drums. So we're going to do a new track. I'm going to go for a drum program this time because that's what we need. And we're going to go to Browse, and we'll come out of Sample Assign. And I'm using my MPC SSD, which is obviously the solid state drive inside of the device. You can obviously plug in SD cards and all that kind of stuff. Let's go with, let's come out of here. I'm going to go to drums. And we'll use Beat Butcher stuff just because I always like the sound of his drums. Let's find a kick drum. Kind of like this one, it's kind of low and not too in your face. We'll just make sure the pad is selected and press load. You can audition that. I'm going to put full level on now. And let's just jump over and find a hi-hat. I kind of like this one, Zam Hat it's called. Let's put it on here. Okay, and let's find maybe a rim shot. Let's see. I think because of the sound of the sample, the rim shot might work quite well. That one there is kind of nice, pretty punchy. Might do a little bit of sound design on it, but let's load that up. Yeah, okay. Need to iron out a few things. Quickly into the sort of sample edit where we can just take a look at a couple of things. The main thing I'm interested in is seeing the volume for these samples, because sometimes you buy sample packs or whatever, all the drum sounds can be, you know, different volume levels. We need to find the ones we're looking for. So this is our kick. I can see here it could be a little bit louder. If we move over to trim mode and go to processing and normalize it, just make that a little louder. And then I'm looking for the snare drum or the rim shot. And that's going to be okay. Then we can kind of balance things. So let's put some basic drums together. We now want to decide the pace of the track. We can change it from 70. Let's go 75. Super basic. Let's take the hi-hats. I'm going to turn full level back off though, so that we've got some variation in there. And we're still snapping this to 1/16 in terms of the quantization. Now, overdub, because we're going back in. Good enough. Something real basic for a second. Before we go any further with the drums and do any processing, I just want to see how that feels with the sample chops. So we'll move back a track to where the chops are. I think the feel, the vibe is kind of right. Try pitching it a little bit. Yeah, I think there's something there that I kind of like. Might even record those chops just while they're sort of in my head. Yeah, don't mind that. Might even just get on and see if we can build another sequence using the same sample chops, but just put the like switch ups and stuff together now, and then we'll come back and sort the drums out and things, because we need to kind of, yeah, play with that a little bit. Let's go to a new sequence. So what we'll do here, we'll select this sequence and I'm going to copy. So copy the sequence and we can copy it here. It will call it sequence 01 unless you change it to be organized. Let's at least make it sequence 02. We could call it intro verse or whatever, but let's just do it like that. Now here, where the sample chops are on this second sequence, it's exactly the same. I'm just going to press erase and do it. So now we just got the drums. And we can work out just slightly different chop pattern or something. kind of like that. I like almost like a little switch up. It might only need to be something like 1 bar long, but we'll record it like that anyway. Now, one thing, slight mistake, was that I didn't have full level on for my sample chops. I can go back in and I can fix the MIDI on the first sequence, but here what we're going to do is we'll just re-record that. I'm still not sure about the pattern there anyway, but I want to make sure full level is on. Yeah, just so that there's like a switch up, something that happens. Let's go back and take a quick look at that MIDI while it's on my mind. If we go to our grid view, we can see everything here. I was probably hitting the notes quite hard anyway, so it's probably not too bad. But if we select everything, and then we go to, we've got velocity, so you go to automation, make sure velocity is enabled, and then we should be able to just make sure everything is dialed up to 100%, which it is. It seems okay, that I think that should be fine for everything. You'll see kind of like yellow and orange if it's kind of a low velocity on any of these notes, but just looking at them, I can see they were pretty close. So that should be fine. Good enough. Let's come back to the idea of the drums. It needs something a little bit, I think like maybe a ride cymbal or something to just kind of smooth things along for the style of it. So let's go back to our drums track, which is here, and we can browse for a different sample. Not sure what we've got in this folder. Do we have any rides in here? Maybe not. Let's go where we know we've definitely got some ride cymbals, and I think British Music Library will have some. There's only one in that particular folder. Let's go to British Music Library again, but this time Good Days Dig Volume 1 this is from. Let's take a look. Rides. There we go. I'm going to go with this one, slightly softer, and we might just take a piece of that. Let's load it to the pad. And I just want to do that. I just want to record it into the sequence, and then we'll trim it and play around with pitch and things. Needs to be, again, overdub because we're coming back. Quickly into the grid view, and we'll use the zoom tool to just kind of zoom in here. We know it's this row across the top. I just want to select the odd little note just while velocity and automation is still on. I'm just going to change the velocity on a couple of these so it's a little bit quieter as it moves through. Don't want them all hitting exactly the same volume. And then we can take a look at that sample. If we go into the track edit and make sure this one is selected, we can go to samples and choose semitones where we can pitch the sample up and down. If I want to, I might put a little envelope on there. If you feel like the crash cymbal's a little harsh at the beginning, if you go to amp and envelope, you could apply a little attack. You could dial that in. Now you can use your finger here, of course, but you can use the dials as well if you want to just apply a little bit of attack to it. soften it just as it comes in. And then back on samples with the semitones, I think with rides, sometimes pitch them up and down, just see if it fits better with the sample. It doesn't sound too bad actually the way it is, but if we wanted to, we could play around with the pitch. I kind of like it slowed down by 5 semitones, thereabouts. I only want it to be this subtle background thing, not like a big harsh ride that's in your face. So if we go back to global, I'm just going to take the level down as well, so it's just kind of simmering away underneath the drums. Good enough. The next issue that I've got is with the little rim shot. Sounds very dry, very just dry. That's the only way to say that. Let's do the effect here. Again, we could come back on a pad level and do it, but there are effects that you can apply while you're right here. So let's apply an effect to this. And a little reverb, I think, is in order. So let's go with reverbs. We'll try just the basic, or should we do a spring reverb? See what that sounds like. Can open this up. Yeah, kind of like that. Another thing I'm going to do is open this up and put a filter on. Just run a tiny little bit of the high end out of the rim shot. So air filter, select, and we're going to just cut off some of the high end. So it's on a low pass. Whenever I'm playing with any of these, the thing that's in my mind is that I'm always looking or listening for those drum sounds and seeing how they fit with the sample. If something's too shiny, something's too bright, the sample's kind of lo-fi and a bit crusty, and then the drums are all really shiny, it just doesn't feel like everything's glued together. And gluing it together earlier on means that when you get to mixing and mastering, if you decide you're going to keep this as a track, it will make your life so much easier because you've done most of the hard work now. A little bit of compression here and there, whatever, is just going to sweeten it. So we've made the fake sample, we've put some drums together. We could do the same thing here. I don't know if it's necessary, but we could try it. Let's solo these drums. We could run them through the SP and see if that gives us more of an effect, something that we want out of it. It might not be necessary. They kind of sound okay. But just for the sake of it, let's go to MFX and turn on, say, like the vinyl sim, and have them play through that. Just do a little A/B test. I do actually kind of like them through the vinyl sim because the compression brings the noise floor up. Obviously, you're getting an increase in gain, but we'll bring that back down anyway, just to kind of balance it. Because with this type of track and the sample chops, it's a very mellow kind of vibe. The drums don't need to be slapping you in the face. I don't think they need to be the thing that's at the forefront. If it's more boom bappy and the drums are kind of the thing that's driving it, then yeah, you might want it a bit more in your face. But I do kind of like the way they sound through there, so I'm going to record that. We'll just go back to our sampler. Same thing, because we're sending it from the SP. We want to be very careful that the monitoring is still off. And when we play this, you can just Get a feel for how loud that is, especially once we put the effect on. Let's turn this down a bit because it'd be loud. Good enough. Let's just record that. Now, actually, one little thing. As we're increasing the compression, then obviously those ride cymbals suddenly become a little bit more in your face. That's, you know, it's bringing that noise floor up. So I'm just dialing those back to compensate for that because I still want those to be kind of in the background. I don't want them being brought to the forefront. So let's keep it like that. Let's go there and we'll just record. Take whatever we need, 2 bars will be good enough. We'll keep that. I might name this as drums just so that I don't get confused with the other samples we've created, and we'll keep it. Again, we need to turn the effects back off on the SP, otherwise you're doubling everything up. And just make sure nothing else is on. And then what we can do is we can go to main, jump over to the sample, and we'll be able to find that new sample that we call drums, which is here. This is our new drum loop. Good enough. We'll process that. So I'm going to normalize it. And here's a cool thing with the MPCs. You can do this on the older ones as well. If you want to, it's a little bit like using a clipper that's built in. You can't push it too far because it'll end up with kind of unwanted distortion. But you'll notice we normalize that to what is essentially 0 dB. And then what we can do is we can go to process. And if you move over, you can go to gain. And you can actually increase the gain. But I wouldn't do it too much, maybe like 2, 3, 4 max in terms of this. I'm not sure if that number equates to a dB, so you're moving up like 3 dB. But if we do this, you'll notice it's pushed everything up. It's essentially clipped the tops of those transients, but sometimes it can sound kind of cool. Might be a very subtle difference, but you're just clipping everything out a little bit. If you push it too much, you'll know what I mean. You'll get a bunch of distortion that isn't very pleasant. But that's kind of cool. Just, yeah, brings the level up a little bit and probably crunches them a tiny little bit. Anyway, let's go to main where we can now put this thing in. We just want to replace everything that's in this pool. There's no point in creating a new track because we've already got one for drums. So we're going to go to browse and sample assign. And I'm just going to clear the pads. So here we'll clear those out. Look for our new sample, which is drums. The one thing we haven't done, though, is we haven't trimmed it. Forgot to trim it. So let's trim the thing and make sure it's looped up. Always figure on it being the last kick drum. I usually leave it so I can hear one extra kick drum and then I'll know where to chop it kind of easily. We'll just zoom in and we'll chop it down here somewhere. Oops. Skip that along because my hands are sweaty. Let's just bring it back in like this a touch. Shift and 0 snapping, just make sure that's on so that it's jumping to the snapping point, and probably around there is going to be close enough. We can then discard and we should have a proper loop which can then be loaded onto our pad 1. I'll do it from the sample assign because it's right here. Choose the pad and drums. Whoops. Double click. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a bug, but I always hear things. It's like it's time stretching it when you're just in this sample pool and it's auditioning the sample. Not sure if that's a bug. Don't know why it's time stretching it there, but it always does. If we go to main though, it'll be fine. Weird little thing. And then what we can do is we can record that back into our loop. One thing though, we need to get rid of any other MIDI information. So where we're on this particular sequence, I'm going to say erase and say do it just to make sure there's no other MIDI. Just let it play a couple of times, just make sure the loop's correct. Sometimes it takes a second to kind of catch up with itself, but that's okay. We've now just created a new drum loop with our things. One thing here though, because we've messed with the sequence 2, I think that should be okay. Yeah. No, it's not, because we still got that MIDI information that we don't need. So erase, I'm going to delete, and I'm just going to quickly re-record that into sequence 2 where the switch up is. Oops, my timing was a bit poor there. Okay, and I'm just going to let it play, just make sure it's looped. And there we go. We can take the solo off, we can move back a sequence. I'm going to turn those drums down a little bit, so if we open this channel up, we can dial those back a bit. Depends on what you're after, but for me, that's kind of the vibe for this. The sample chops, the drums are playing the background a little bit. I don't want them kind of in your face. I want them tucked ever so slightly. To not make the episode too much longer, let's maybe add in a bass line, and then maybe we'll find a little vocal sample or something to put in there just on top of that. We've probably got enough in terms of like the vinyl effect and stuff that we had from when we've been playing with the SP, so we don't need too much more texture, but texture is a big thing that I enjoy in the beats. If you have like a drum loop and it's all completely dry, no reverb, no static and stuff, everything just seems a little bit dull. If you crunchy things up, sounds much better to me. Just want to check my sequence. Yeah, cool, we've got the switch up and everything else. So let's add another track. We're going to add a key group. I don't particularly care for many of the bass sounds that I've found on the MPC so far in terms of the plugins, so I'm going to use one of my own sample packs again because I want an analog bass sound and I want it to be a C note. So we're going to go back to browsing and out of sample assign, move up, and I'm just going to go back to C notes again, which was my own. So sample packs and C notes and bass, where we have a bunch of analog guitar sounding bass. Just going to play the track and audition a couple of these so that I can see which one fits. I think golden bass is the one that works for me. So I'm going to load it to the pool because it doesn't matter if I try and load it to the key group, it won't work. We have to go in and sample assign and do it that way. It's definitely got to be a bug. You should be able to just load it to the key group. Let's go to first pad, find golden bass, double click on that. Whoops, more careful. That should be loaded up, is it? No, what have we done here? Let's try that again. This is the one I want. Why is that? Is that another weird bug, or is it just zoomed in? Okay, it's just zoomed in. That's fine. We need to do the same thing that we did before, so global. Now, I don't want polyphonic here because it's a bass note. I just want that monophonic, so I'm going to set the key group to mono. It means I can't overlap the sample. And then in terms of the sample itself, I think everything else should be kind of cool. We want a little bit of release. Yeah, okay. Now we've pitched our sample chops at this point. So when it comes back to using this little pad perform, we're no longer in D major because we've pitched it down. I can't remember what we pitched it, 3 semitones, 2 semitones or something. So the sample that we know was in D major is no longer probably in D major. So here I'm just going to move into chromatic and I'll just try and work it out by ear for the bass line. And again, it will be something super simple. like those 2 notes just for this switch up work, so we'll record that. It won't take too long. That's the switch up covered. That's nice and simple. Hopefully we get something that works for the main part now. Something there. For the sake of getting the video finished, let's keep moving. That end note, I'm not keen on that. Let's go into the grid view and just take out that one final note that's there. I just don't think it's necessary. We can zoom in and erase it. Actually, you can just do shift and you can do cut as long as it's selected. Keep forgetting that you can do that. Yeah, I don't mind that it kind of drops off towards the end and you get a little bit of space where the bass line isn't there. I think that's kind of okay. So I think that's kind of cool. We'll just quickly go back to the grid view. Not the grid view, sorry, my bad. Let's go back to main. I want to look at my channel mixer. Just like that. And I want to find a sample just to add in a little vocal sample. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my switcher box, move it to channel 1, which should be coming from my iPad, all being well. And I'm going to go and do a selfish plug, shameless plug, selfish plug, whatever you want to call it, for my new channel, which is Acapella Cat. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want a little hip-hop vocal sample. And I'm going to take it from one of these acapellas that I have created. So let's go to that channel and find something that I want. We'll find an artist. Let's go with Conway the Machine. See if we can find something that we like. We'll just choose, let's choose Air Holes. That was a good track. Probably says something on there that we can use. Just need to go over to my sampling. Now, because we're sampling from another source, this time it's okay. It's not coming from the SP. So we can put our monitoring on and in. And hopefully we'll hear something. There we go. Should have some volume.
Look. I'm back focused, nigga. I hope a nigga get out of line. I can't wait to smoke a nigga. All this Girl Scout smoking, nigga. This shit is potent, nigga. Cookie straight from Oakland, nigga. Shout out to my Oakland niggas. The real niggas that don't hesitate to bust your shit open, nigga.
What up, my nigga?
I said I'm back focused, nigga. Now they quoting shit I wrote and they telling me I'm the dopest, nigga. My plug got the doping, nigga.
Okay, gonna leave it like that. We're gonna keep that as Conway. And say do it. And then we're gonna jump over where we can edit it. Now, I'm not sure what part of that I want, but there'll be something just to use as a little vocal sample. So we'll look for Conway, zoomed out. Make sure we're in trim mode and just skip through. I think there was something towards the end.
And they telling me I'm the dopest, nigga. Wrote and they telling me I'm the dopest, nigga. My shit I wrote and they telling me I'm the dopest, nigga. I wrote and they telling me I'm the dope. Wrote and they telling me I'm the dopest, nigga.
Okay, I'm gonna trim it down roughly just for now. Let's do discard.
And they telling me I'm the dope. Telling me I'm the dopest, nigga. They telling me I'm the dopest, nigga. They telling me I'm the dope. They telling me I'm the dopest.
Maybe just something like that. And we'll trim that down. We need somewhere to put it, so quickly let's create a new track. I could put it in the first drum track with the rest of the drums, but let's just add a new drum track and put it in here. And then we can load that sample in. We can go to sample assign and find the first pad.
They
Conway.
telling me I'm the dopest.
Again, you can hear that weird time stretching thing it does there. I'm not sure why.
They telling me I'm the dopest. They telling me I'm the dopest.
Now, let's take a little bit more off the sample. Let's go back in here.
They telling me I'm the dopest.
I think what it wants is a little bit of delay maybe towards the end, which we could do via the SP if we wanted to, or we could just do it here maybe. Let's just see how it fits with the rest of the track.
They telling me I'm the dopest. They telling me I'm the dopest. They telling me I'm the dopest.
Actually, fits kind of okay, so then let's add a little effect. So I'm going to add a delay to that. A diff delay.
They telling me I'm the dopest. They telling me I'm the dopest.
And actually, I'm going to leave the mix down. We might use automation. Let's just put it into the track where we want it. I'm wondering whether we have it on the switch up as opposed to the beginning. So if we've got it on this second sequence.
They telling me I'm the dopest. 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 They telling me I'm the dopest.
Yeah, kind of might just put it in there. Pitched it down a couple of semitones. This needs to be record and play start, is okay.
They telling me I'm the dopest. They telling me I'm the dopest.
It's not a perfect chop. The position of it also could be a little bit better. We've got timing correction on. Let's just move in and select
They
it.
telling me I'm the dopest.
Do nudge, but don't snap it.
They telling me I'm the dopest. They telling me I'm the dopest. They telling me I'm the dopest. They telling me I'm the dopest.
Yeah, it's okay. Timing and where I chopped it could have been a bit better, but for the sake of finishing up the episode, let's not worry about it too much. We will play around with a little automation, though, is what I'm kind of interested in. So if we turn automation on, and you need to be careful because as soon as it's on and you move a parameter, you don't have to press record. It will start changing. It will record that automation. We want to go to the effect where the air diff delay is, and I want to be on the mix. And I'm going to use this bottom encoder to dial that in at a certain point as this is playing. So let's see if we can get this right.
They telling me I'm the dopest.
not perfect. It's not really where I wanted it. Quick tip for you, if you go into grid view, that's how you find that automation. So you need to be here. You can drop down and click on velocity and see what else you've got. There you go. It's here. So if we want to delete that automation, we can delete it out. Just try that again. Go back here, open this up. And I think it just needs to be a little bit later with where I put the delay effect.
They telling me I'm the dopest.
My bad, didn't have the right cue link selected, so let's try that again. Because did we just mess with our panning? I didn't mean to do that. If we do undo, no, it's okay. We can redo that. Let's go back and quickly just try it again. Just make sure the right cue link is selected this time.
They telling me I'm the dopest. They telling me I'm the dopest.
Yeah, good enough for today's episode. Make sure you turn your automation back off though, because if you change your volumes, anything, it's going to be recorded as automation. Just make sure it's off. So that's going to be us for today's episode. I'll play out on the beat. I'll run it through like the SP. Just for funsies, let's do shift and tap tempo. Make sure this is set to 75. And on this effect over here, I'm going to put it back to my tape stop effect because I like that one. Just make sure it's turned off. And that's going to be it. We could create an intro. We could go further into it, but this episode's been long enough. I hope it's been useful to you. Hope you've enjoyed it. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Take care.